And I don't know where it's going to put it. Okay, so.
Yeah, I can see your recording now. So.
Okay. All right. Okay, so I'm going to go back to sharing the screen. There we go. If I can get it to come up. Share screen. Okay.
You did a PowerPoint.
I did. And now I can't. Let's see.
You're going to run it? Okay, there you go.
There we go. Okay, so what Google learned. Okay, because, yeah. All right, so share something personal. So I thought maybe we could share something personal this week because that was how they kind of got together. We went on a hot air balloon ride. My daughter and my son-in-law gave us a Christmas gift, and it was early, and they gave us a ride on the hot air balloon, and because it was on my bucket list, and it was so much fun. I thought I would be terrified, but it was truly amazing because you just kind of float up. Have you ever been on one?
I have not.
So
sounds like fun.
It was. You just
down, but
so you float. It's not like a super scary, like, on those really scary rides that are up and down, up and down. It's just a nice gentle float up, and then you just kind of, because we didn't have it just wherever the wind took us and then we landed. It was really fun. But
cool.
Anyway, okay. So I wanted to show you this, and then so you have time to think about sharing something you want to share. We'll just hurry in. And we're going to watch this other thing. Hang on. If I can. Okay. Okay, I guess maybe, I don't know if it'll click onto it. I have it open.
You might need to, on the share screen, actually click on it and then share that specific video once you start it. Is that what you're going to do, is play the...
Well, if I can get... Oh, there we go. Can you see it?
No, I just see your screen, so you need to click share again and then change it to what you want to share.
Okay. It's not... Can you hear it?
Just faintly in the background.
Okay.
I know you all have concerns about this Sunday.
Hey, Jonathan, how's it going?
Real man.
Hey, Jonathan.
Admits his fears.
Okay. What?
Did you try clicking on that, share your screen, and then select?
I did.
And then
it's not.
select the video?
Okay.
There you go. Now it's up.
But I want to take it back a little bit. Okay.
And you'll need to probably turn your volume up. Yeah.
Can you hear it?
Very faintly.
Admits his fears.
Can you hear it?
I'm scared of spiders, Coach. Well, that's not what I meant. Too, Coach. I'm afraid of spiders, too, Coach. Yeah. That damn spider tricked me, too, fellas. Well, I didn't mean that, though, yeah. But I'm talking about...
Can you hear it any better?
Still very faint in the background, but...
Yeah. Well, thanks, Jumbo. You can just rock me to sleep tonight.
Yeah, I can hear it.
That's not what I'm talking about. What I'm talking talking about is what scares us on the field. You mean like spiders on the field? Get beyond the spiders, please. Bees. Nothing but a bee. Anybody here afraid of anything other than insects? Huh? Come on. Quicksand. Oh, shit, Jim. Hey, quicksand's a scary mother, man. I mean, first of all, it sucks you right in, and even if you scream, you get all that muck in your mouth. What Shane had in mind.
Okay. Sorry. So the basic part of that was that they were sharing something to help them become a team and their fears. So they were sharing what was their biggest fear. And that was one way that they were going to be able to come together and be united. Sorry, I was hoping it would work better. I had this really great plan, but yeah.
That's all right.
I had a plan. So anyway, all right. So I'm going to let you guys, oh my gosh. Okay. So share a personal experience that you've had. I shared something about going on a hot air balloon ride that, you know, I was afraid, but it was on my bucket list and we were able to do it.
So do you want us to share something from our personal experiences that would?
Yeah, something from your, you know, something personal about you. It can be anything, something great that's just happened, you know, just anything that you want to share.
Okay, I could share last semester. Well, so maybe about a month and a half ago. Went ahead and took my kids and my wife to Spain, where I served my mission. So it'd been my first time back since being there as a missionary.
Yeah.
So we spent just under 2 weeks in Spain, and then the last 5 days in London. So pulled the kids out of school and thought it was a more important experience than they would get in sitting in a classroom to go and kind of experience another culture. And so they enjoyed themselves most of the time.
Oh yeah, that would be so cool.
Other than when it was raining a lot, they didn't quite find that as much fun. So, but it's something I always wanted to do. I always wanted to return to where I served my mission at, and so got an opportunity to do it. And actually, went to church with two sisters that I taught when I was there as a missionary.
Oh,
so,
wow.
Yep. So that's pretty good for 49 years old, back when I was a missionary, to actually get to sit in church with two people that I taught. So yeah, it was kind of exciting.
Oh, awesome. All right.
Jonathan, your turn.
We actually just went on a trip too. Can you hear me? Okay.
Yeah.
Yep.
I don't generally do a whole lot of traveling, but we just went on a trip actually down to Utah and spent 2 weeks there. In fact, pulled the kids out of school and had to write a letter to the school board so that they didn't kick them out of the school. And interesting. But we'd never, the only time that I had been in Utah before was when I went into the MTC. So I didn't have much experience with kind of the, I guess, LDS culture in kind of normal life, where you could like drive down the street and see a temple and church building on a lot of street corners, and you could go into bookstores that were LDS bookstores and that kind of stuff. So it was good. It was good for my kids. Something that I don't know if we'll go to Utah again, but just probably started what will be the first of many trips that we go on as a family.
Cool. So where do you live, Jonathan?
I live in Alaska, in Fairbanks.
Oh, wow. Wow, that's cool.
Yeah.
All right. So, okay. So from your personal experience, what have been key behaviors in effective teams?
Good communication. Essential.
Yeah.
That's pretty much it for me too. I mean, there's lots of segues that you can have in good communication, like respect and trust and understanding, and the different dynamics that go into communication. But for me, it's pretty much been communication.
Yeah, I think also empathy is one that I've seen, that, you know, being willing to, and I guess that does go back to communication, being willing to not only try to communicate your thought, but willing to listen to the thoughts of others. So empathy for the point of view that they come from, and being able to listen to that, to their point of view without criticizing that point of view, but respecting it, that's where they're coming from and how they're approaching either the problem or the discussion.
So are you guys seeing my PowerPoint?
No, right now we're seeing you.
Okay. So I can see my PowerPoint, but I can't see you guys.
I think another, from my personal experiences, are clearly defined what you're, when you're working with a team, you need a clear definition of what you're trying to accomplish. Because otherwise it's just a meeting to have a meeting, and I hate nothing more than having a meeting just to have a meeting.
Yeah.
So clear definition of what you're trying to accomplish with the team meeting that you're doing.
Yeah.
And then who's doing what based on that. I have meetings very frequently where I have a coworker where we have the same vision, at least we say that we have the same vision, and then we leave the meeting and something very, very different happens. So usually it stems from not having we say, okay, we're trying to accomplish X, and we're going to do it by doing A, B, C, and D, and then I have the understanding that they're doing one thing and they have the understanding that they're doing something else, so the work doesn't actually get done.
See, and I always do, for that, I always do, after my meetings, I do minutes and clearly spelled out what the action items are coming off those minutes and send them out to everyone that was at the meeting. So at least with all of my managers that I have, when we get done, everyone has an action list that comes out of that my secretary takes and then pushes out to all of the managers of what I'm expecting. By the time we have our next meeting, everyone come back with your task items complete, or at least an update on those task items of where you're at in completing those items. I think probably the last thing I would add that's important in teams and team meeting situation is dependability. There's nothing worse than you schedule a meeting and two of the guys don't show up. And they're like, oh, I've got something else that came up that I've got to do. You got to be able to, so I typically schedule them same time every week. Just block out your schedule. Don't plan on doing anything else during that time. So.
Yeah. So apparently communication is really important. Okay. So I find that it's different for me as far as like church versus work. Like I don't have, when I wrote down my personal experiences, I didn't have like, I mean, I work for a company and I work with a whole bunch of people, but it's not like we're a team, or like we have meetings where so the only reference I had was church. So like it being in a presidency or, being on a committee would be the only experience I would have had where I worked with a team. So.
What's interesting about that is that I used to always approach, when I was dealing with something in a way of working with somebody at church, I always approached it in a sense, these are all volunteers.
Right.
They have the liberty of saying yes or no, or not even doing what they said that they were going to do. And I guess I don't allow myself to get upset about it, because I always go, they're volunteers and they have, that agency to choose whether or not to do it.
Right.
And I always treat it like that. From my work perspective, my expectations are slightly different, because as a manager, when I give them a task, I expect them to follow through with that task. And and maybe we shouldn't sometimes take as lax, at least from my perspective, maybe I shouldn't take sometimes as lax a perspective in relation to church as what I do. That I should have an expectation of, when assignments given out, whether it be given to me or given to somebody else, you're going to follow through with that assignment. It reminds me of in the scriptures when, who's the Roman captain? Is it a captain that came up to Christ, asked him about, and asked him to heal one of his servants? And, and Christ says, it's basically, well, let's go to your house and I'll heal him. And he says, no, just say that it will be, and I know that it'll happen. So he had faith. He said, I'm not worthy for you to even be in my house. But
Right.
He had such faith in the Lord that he was like, if you say it's going to happen, I know it's going to happen, because I'm a leader of men. And when I tell them to do something, I expect it to be done. And he had that attitude. And that's when Christ said, if the Jews would even have a fraction of that faith that he had, what he would accomplish among them.
So I have a different view on, as far as church. I realize that we're all volunteers, but when we say that we're going to do something, or when we raise our hand and say, yes, we're going, we agree with that calling or whatever, or, then you have made a commitment. It's not just to the bishop, it's now to the Lord. And so now so I think sometimes I realize we all can make mistakes, and we all are human. But I find that, if somebody's in a presidency and they don't follow through with something, I have a hard time with that, because they have said that they would do that, and they would, and that, it's not important. That's like if you're, Mormon Standard Time, if you really loved the Lord, you would be on time, right? That you're showing that you're committed to be, to the gospel, and showing up on time is one of those things where you're being respectful. So anyway, sorry.
I found that people grow or rise to the standard that you set for them. I think the one thing that can be a little bit more difficult in the church setting as compared to professional or business setting is usually you have firm deadlines in the business setting. And I think at church, we say that we need things done, but a lot of times we don't put a deadline on it. And so we can, and I don't know that deadlines are always a good thing. I think the goals at church are a little bit squishier sometimes than the goals at work. And so,
Right.
But I would agree, you set a standard and people will rise to it. So whatever standard you're wanting to achieve, that's what you have to be willing to do as a leader.
Right. But that's with anything, I think. I mean, not just in church, but you're right. If any expectation, if you have high expectations for somebody, they'll usually, okay. So now we're going to talk about group norms. So when you read the Google thing, and they had they did all that research about norms, unspoken and spoken norms. And I don't know if when you took the thing where you had to talk about did you write down what you thought our norms were? Because I was like, we've only met once. I can't even gauge what our norms would include, because we've met just one time. So what do you think our unspoken or spoken norms are?
I did write down a couple of things, but I struggled with it the same way you did. We've only met one time. What are our norms to this point? I felt like from our first meeting we had good communication. We all shared, and I think that was something they pointed out in the thing, that everybody needed to feel like they could contribute.
Right.
And that good group, there was actually quite a bit of balance of sharing of ideas and not domination. They said even when your characteristics of the individuals changed, there was still balance by the time you got to the end. And I felt like, at least in our last meeting, even though we got cut a little bit short, I felt like we did have a balanced conversation. It wasn't one-sided. It wasn't dominated specifically by one person. I felt like we communicated. We shared different points of view. I know Jonathan shared from his business experience in that last meeting. He shared he felt that the main supervisor in our last topic, that she was, she didn't take the opportunity to kind of cut off that attitude as it was first coming up. And my perspective was slightly different perspective from it, but I know that we both got to share our perspective. So I think that showed an example of, willingness to listen. And, I wasn't hurt by what Jonathan said, and I don't think anybody else was hurt by what I said. Go ahead.
I think and it might just be from experience, I think we kind of have a dynamic where we understand how meetings are supposed to be, and that the fact that, like what you were saying, not all of us are going to have the same opinion, but that does not mean that one person's wrong and one person's right necessarily.
Right.
Be okay with that. In fact, I found in the specifically, it seems to be more high functioning at church than it does, at least at my work. I found that we kind of like to have the opposite discussion just to make sure we fully cover the topic. It's when everybody agrees on something that can actually be a bad thing.
Right. Well, so if you've ever heard about the Quorum of the 12 meetings, they're, with the First Presidency, they're all men who have different opinions. They don't all have the same opinions, and they get to speak their mind, but then at the end, they follow the Spirit and are able to come to an agreement, because nothing gets changed unless it's unanimous. So all the changes that have been happening only happen because everyone has come to an agreement. And it's not like they're going to get paid off to come to that agreement. They're going to agree because it's the right thing.
Yeah, and oftentimes I'm with Jonathan on that too, that oftentimes I think somebody needs to take more of a dissension point of view. If everybody's agreeing to something, somebody needs to argue the other side, just so the other side can be heard.
I had an experience
from a different point of view.
Actually, recently, I guess it was probably 2 or 3 years ago now. I was meeting with the Young Women's Presidency, and they were unified in a course of action with a particular young woman. And so I asked, they felt unified and they didn't feel like they needed to discuss it anymore. And they said there are potential impacts for this young woman that could be pretty severe. So we need to discuss the dissenting opinion as well to make sure that we fully discuss it, because there will be a time when there is a potential consequence for what happens, and we need to have said that we considered that avenue and we were still okay with what happened. And sure enough, several months later, there was a consequence for what happened, and we were able, the Young Women's Presidency was able to, as a united voice, say we considered that when we made the decision, and we knew that was a potential outcome, and we are okay with the consequence.
Yep. There's nothing worse than arguing one point of view and not listening to the opposing point of view. So you have to be able to defend your position, not you defend your position, but as you put it in that instance, you have to be okay with understanding where that other point of view comes from, but still comfortable or moving forward with the action that you're deciding to do, despite having heard that other point of view and understanding what that consequence is. So.
Okay. So So I think that our group has healthy group norms. I don't know if we need to change anything.
No, I mean, I would say dependability. I think we communicate well.
I think we just probably need to maybe I just don't know if I can't think of the other guy's name in our group, but is it Steven?
Mm-hmm.
I just don't, maybe he didn't look at the second email on that chain when I gave the address.
Oh, when you gave the address, I did post it on our spreadsheet that I set up for
Oh, okay.
our thing too. So.
Oh, I saw that it had been updated. So, okay.
I'm still having issues. I know I joined about 8 minutes late, but I had started 5 minutes early to try to find the link. I'm not sure why, but I'm still on several other groups meeting calendars and stuff. So all of my class emails for this class are buried. I had to go. I ended up searching in my email for the link just by searching for the class number, and that's the only reason I found it. In fact, I emailed you guys. Probably 5:35 and said, can't find the link, don't know where we're supposed to be. So it ended up being buried for me too.
So, and I think that clicked, I mean, I think I heard that ping, but I was trying to get that other thing going. So I didn't check my email, sorry. And I only have one screen right now because I had to put on the Ethernet because otherwise my double screen doesn't have an Ethernet. So,
Owen, did you say there's a shared document?
Yeah, I posted a B321 Group 3 shared spreadsheet, and that's where you're going to sign up for which case you want to do, the 2 cases you want to do.
Is that?
And it's a Google Doc, yeah, that's what it is.
I'm not seeing.
And I can share it with you again. I think you're on that list. Let me check. It looks like I shared it, but you never did anything with it. So, Jonathan, yeah, it was to your BYU address is where it went. You want to use a different one?
Yeah, I've never used that for. Yeah, do Coytibbs, COYTIBBS.
COY. Say that again. I'm sorry.
COY.
TIBBS
at Gmail.
I'm sorry, I got a lot of noise in the background. So Coytibbs at gmail.com.
Yeah.
And I gave you edit. So, okay, I sent it to that email address. So you should be able to access it and sign up for two of those.
okay. So the next one says, how does psychological safety in a team increase overall effectiveness? And what are the roles of communication and empathy in creating psychological safety?
Communication and empathy are essential in creating psychological safety. It's interesting because I actually shared some of what we had read in the Google Doc in another class. Matter of fact, that be 361 class.
Oh, uh-huh.
Because one of the things we were talking about, we were talking about quality improvement in organizations, and I posted, hey, in this class we're actually talking about that, and that in groups and in discussions you have to feel psychologically safe and communication. And somebody responded back to my group discussion post in that she had struggled with it throughout her time at BYU, that she felt like, especially in her business classes, oftentimes starting into a group, she felt like she was never listened to, that her point of view was never listened to. And so she would stop sharing her ideas. And she said, and it caused, that animosity between the group, because the guys she happened to, every time, she said so far, has always ended in a group of 2 to 3 male students versus just herself. And so she always felt like her ideas were discounted and not listened to. And it wasn't until one of these last ones, somebody brought it up and it's like, why aren't you sharing your ideas and stuff? And so then she was able to share, you guys never listen to anything I say. Why do I want to, want to share my ideas? So it went back to that she didn't feel psychologically, she didn't feel safe sharing. She felt like every time she said something, it was going to be blown off.
Yeah.
And so I think it's essential that empathy and being able to understand another point of view is essential in communicating in a group. Being able to listen to another point of view and not get upset about it. There's too many people in this world today
Yeah.
that are unable to hear another point of view without arguing about that point of view. You should be able to have a discussion about a point of view, and you have an understanding, somebody else has an understanding from a different point of view, and have a discussion about it.
Right.
Kind of reminds me, I was in a training once. This was probably 7-8 years ago, and it was this heating, air conditioning training for these specific systems, and there was a guy from Hawaii that was there at this training. And so it would just so happened it was when Obama was elected. And so we were sitting down together at lunch, and we were having a conversation, and we were talking about Obamacare at the time. And he had expressed his point of view that he was really happy. You know, obviously was really happy and thought that it would do a lot of good for people. And, you know, and he shared his point of view, and I shared my point of view. I was able to say, well, I don't think it's as good a, prospect as what you think it is, because, and I was able to give him reasons and say, you know, I think it discounts responsibility, personal responsibility. I think it leaves that by the wayside, and it's not that I'm not in favor of caring for people, but the way about that it's done is not the way that I think is a good way to take care of it. And we were able to share those ideas. He was able to share what he thought. And at the end, he shook my hand and he said, that was a really good conversation. I really enjoyed hearing another perspective that was still positive in that you want to help people, but you weren't trying to bash my ideas, but you were willing to listen what I had to say and then share what you thought, you know, would have been a better or more effective system to be put in place. And so it kind of, that one moment kind of taught me a lesson that it was really important to try to find common ground when you're having a discussion with someone. Even though you have a different point of view, find commonalities between what you're discussing, and then build from those commonalities, then build your discussion from there. And then they feel safe. There's that safety, psychological safety there of being able to listen to you and hear a different point of view without immediately trying to come up with an argument of why that's a bad idea.
Right. Okay, Jonathan, you had something? John, did you have something?
I don't remember what it is now.
Okay. Sorry. So, I think that I think the more secure or safe that you feel in the group you're working with, the more you're willing to share. And like Owen was saying, the more you're open up to hear other things. I mean, if you feel safe enough to share, then you also feel secure enough in what you're thinking to be able to accept somebody else's ideas.
I think that is important, because some of the best ideas are just kind of weird and crazy. I mean, to say them out loud, especially in technology. I mean, like when the iPhone came out, you know, to have a camera, a phone, email, you know, all those things in one place. A lot of people would have said, that's crazy, you're not gonna be able to do it. But, you know, it starts with one person saying something, and then it building and building and building until it's actually done. And I think that is important. So some of the craziest ideas at the time don't seem possible, and then you make them possible because somebody said something. I've also found, not that my opinion has changed every time, but there's a difference between being contrary and being contentious.
Yes.
And a contentious conversation, it just never goes anywhere. There is no, I mean, you might as well both just say, just walk away. Even if you are supposed to be working out an idea, contention never bears fruit in anything, but a contrary opinion can. And the hard part is finding enough passion to be contrary and convincing without going so far as to getting angry when it's challenged.
Right. And that is a fine line, I think. So, how does sharing personal experience and being vulnerable influence team dynamics? So remember when the Sakaguchi or whatever, he shared that he was dying of cancer. I mean, and he started that process of opening up, and his team opened up, and they were able to work well together. So how does sharing personal experience and being vulnerable influence team dynamics?
Nobody really wants to do business or really anything with like a computer.
Right.
They want to know that there's another human with real feelings and things on the other end. And when you go through kind of task lists, you don't always get the emotion, the kind of the humanity behind the human. So adding any sort of flavor to that with personal experiences or challenges or successes or whatever it may be really enhance the conversation, because you think about those things when you're working on tasks. I mean, the next time, just like the Sakaguchi who had cancer, the next time somebody says, this is really challenging, he might, and it might not be difficult for him, they might think about that dynamic, and it might change the perspective on it. So I think there's a lot of perspective and just good things that come from personal experiences, not drama, because there are people who share drama and that doesn't help anything.
Right.
And I agree in that sense that when you share true personal feelings and personal experiences, things that are going on, it also builds on empathy, because then your teammates can understand the things that you're struggling with. And it's something I just had a staff meeting this morning, and I had one manager who is quite gets, like you said, Jonathan, gets very quickly moves from concern about something to builds that little bit of anger up about something. He was upset with the way a contractor had treated some time card personnel that we're using. And he says, there's just no reason for that. And, I stopped him and I said, okay, let's build the scenario first, because there's a lot of the scenario you don't understand. So I went back and I laid out the entire scenario of, this was a task that was given to some of the regular maintenance staff 3 weeks ago, and they had not done it. And so this contractor at that point, his frustration level had built up. So when he saw these employees, it's kind of like, I've been waiting for you for 3 weeks to come take care of this stuff. And so they maybe got the brunt, and maybe it wasn't fair, but in relation to that, being able to listen to the entire other perspectives, or understanding other perspectives before taking or making a judgment call or an opinion. I try really hard with some of my managers. Don't jump to conclusions. You have to listen to everything that's going on before making a decision or before making a judgment call in relation to something. When you don't have all the facts, more time than not, you're going to be wrong about the decision that you make. So I really tried to reinforce that with them, that they need to empathize and try to understand, where is he coming from and why would he act that way. It kind of reminds me of that story that Stephen Covey shared about being on the train, and the guy comes in and his kids are jumping all over the place, and if you don't stop and try to see what might be going on with this guy that would change, that would cause him to just sit there and do nothing. I'm constantly trying to get my managers to stop making judgment calls and try to gather all the facts before they do it. It's a struggle that I constantly am struggling with, getting them to stop and actually think from somebody else's perspective.
Yeah. Anything else?
Not that I can think of. I think that's how we build effective team connection.
All right. So, what can you do as an individual to initiate effective team behavior? See, I have a team here. We're working.
Did all of you go up in it together?
No, we went to the Albuquerque. So we went up in a hot air balloon the year before we went to the Albuquerque Balloon Festival. So anyway, so we went in Pagosa Springs, Colorado to go up in a hot air balloon, but we went to Albuquerque for the big balloon festival, which was really fun.
I kind of go back to that, the communication, like Jonathan said at the beginning. Good communication, not just listening communication, or not just speaking communication, but listening communication. Two-way communication is how you build an effective team behavior, is being able to hear and listen and understand different points of view. Without it, you can't build it.
Right.
Depending on your role too. I mean, I've had different positions in my career where, from a team dynamic, the only thing we really did as a team was have meetings, because it was all individual production. So you had a team meeting where it was kind of lined out what needed to happen, and so from an individual's perspective, how you could effectively build, good team behavior. When I was managing the team, I made sure that I literally had to schedule time in my day where I would schedule and say BS with employees, where not in the group dynamic, because they won't share a lot of things there that are
right.
I would go to their desk and I would ask, how's your day going? What's going on? Do you have, summer plans, those types of things. And I knew that I had so much other stuff that I could fill my time with, that if I didn't schedule it in, it wouldn't
Right.
be done. So I did it in half-hour increments, and every day I just would go to somebody. I tried to do a new person every day, and would just kind of go down the line and BS with employees. And I found that the team dynamic was a lot better. Our team meetings were a lot better after that. There was more that came out of it, and I understood better where they were coming from when they asked questions.
Right. So
I think that's essential. That's a skill that a leader and managers really need it. Being able to listen to someone and then understand their point of view or their perspective and how it will differ from other individuals. But if you can't do that, you won't be an effective manager or an effective leader, because you don't hear. You might hear what they say, but what they're saying isn't always what they're actually saying. Sometimes it's if you don't know their background, you won't know what it means when they say something.
right.
You won't be able to read them.
So, all right. So, anyway, so for us to work on our team dynamic, I think we've got we've got some great norms, and I think we actually work well together. So I agree that communication is, I think, really important. And I think also being willing to share. Sometimes you'll get people who don't want to say anything, and you need to be willing to even listen to that unspoken. Does that make sense? The things that are not spoken as well as what is spoken.
Yep.
Anybody have anything else? Last comments?
I thought that case study was actually really interesting. I enjoyed reading it. It didn't feel like an assignment to me. Felt like that's the kind of stuff that I like to read, though.
Yeah, I liked it. I did. Have you looked at next week? Because it's a lot of reading. I was like,
Yeah, I haven't looked at next week's yet, but I did enjoy this particular one. I thought that was very, very interesting. So
Anyway, okay. So if we don't have anything else, we've actually we've been going for like almost 50 minutes. So,
All right.
all right. Hey, thanks guys for participating, and hopefully I can figure out how to I can get this to download and or upload.
Did you save it on your computer then?
I did say to save it on my computer.
So if yours is like mine, when you hit stop, it's going to start processing your YouTube account.
Okay.
You just go into your you know how the same as you do to start a recording on YouTube, but there'll be a file upload there where you can just post a file.
Okay. All right. So now all of a sudden I am
Well, now it's stopped. Well, no, it's still recording.